Hey everybody. There we go. Apologies, y'all. I'm trying to navigate with one screen as opposed to my normal two, so apologies there. But thank you so much, everybody, for joining us, and thank you so much for your patience. I'll get my screen back up and sharing here with y'all because I am incredibly excited to get to start another fabulous Power to Fly Chat and Learn virtual event. Now, while I am getting us all good and ready to go, I hope that y'all are excited to start today's event. I'm going to give you a quick look at our code of conduct today. This is just going to govern today's interactions. So like we normally do, I will just encourage y'all to lead from a place of kindness and respect as we are interacting with each other or networking with our speakers today. Just make sure that we're on our best behavior, y'all. It's all friends here, all love. We want to make sure that it stays that way. Now, as we go into our event here, I just want to say hello and welcome to everyone. If this is your first Power to Fly event, then hi, it's so nice to meet you. Now, even if this isn't your first, maybe it's your 50th, I absolutely love seeing our familiar names and faces in the chat. So thank you all so much for joining us today. Now, if you want to participate in today's event, that's what we are here for. We want to encourage it, and make sure that all of you who took your time out of your day to be here with us live get rewarded for that. So if you want to participate with your camera, you are incredibly welcome to. I always love seeing everyone's smiling, maskless faces safely, but there is no need to be Instagram perfect, y'all. Truly, we don't care if you are rocking a 4-day-old messy bun, whether you are in a ball gown or your bathrobe, three-piece suit, or sitting on the living room couch, we don't care, all right? We just want to meet you where you are so that you can learn with us. Now, if you don't want to interact with the camera, that's fine. You don't have to come on camera. You can always join in the group chat if you'd like. That is where the code of conduct will govern, like I mentioned in Flash earlier. But please feel free to keep that comment section active. Now, as we go through today's event, I just want to remind y'all that we are recording today. We're also live streaming to YouTube. Hi, YouTube. And what that means for all of you is you don't have to take notes. You get to sit back, relax, and enjoy the conversation that I'm about to have with our partners from SoundCloud today. Now, let's say that Sarah says something just so mind-blowing, paradigm shifting, like amazing, and you cannot wait to share it with a friend or a coworker or a relative, you don't have to. So how this is going to work is everybody that registered for today's event, whether you're able to make it or not, everybody is going to get a link from Power to Fly in about 4 to 5 business days. We'll email you with a link to where you can rewatch this recording when it's posted on powertofly.com. Now, I really recommend you check stuff out on the website because there is a huge, like our entire archive, all of our resources, past chats, blog posts, meet the recruiter videos, AMAs, all of that is stored on our website. So I really encourage y'all to check that out. But let's say that you don't want to wait 4 to 5 business days. That's okay. You can always head over to the YouTube channel. We'll be sharing links for all of this in the chat as we go. But you can head to the YouTube channel. The live stream that we're doing now will be posted usually within 15 to 20 minutes, but generally by end of day. And from there is also a small section, some of our best, our favorites or our, greatest hits. Some of our most amazing chats are in the YouTube channel as well. But truly, y'all, the mother load is on the website. I really recommend that y'all check that out. Now, I do also want to encourage y'all to write in the chat. Let us know if you have questions or comments. I'll give you a little bit more information about this in just a moment. But before we go in and introduce our guest, I just realized I didn't introduce myself. Apologies. My name is Meg Alexander. I am part of Power to Fly's virtual hosting team. And as always, incredibly honored and excited to be here for today's event. In case y'all would like a visual description, I am a 37-year-old white woman. I have blue glasses, pink and purple hair that's up in a bun, and a black shirt with colorful hearts on it. Now, if y'all are in the chat, we would love to encourage y'all to chime in there. Please let us know where you're calling in from. I'm always really eager to see how far our global audience spreads. I'm coming to you from Toledo, Ohio. This is land that belongs to the Fox, Kickapoo, and Potawatomi tribes in my area. So if you would like to share where you're joining us from, or if you know whose land you're on, please let us know. Now, I'm very excited to introduce our speaker, but before we do that, I want to remind y'all that she is here today on behalf of SoundCloud. Now, SoundCloud has name recognition. I'm sure I do not need to explain this next generation music entertainment company to you. But if you have never heard of SoundCloud, we'll give you a quick explainer in a little bit. But the big thing to know is that Sarah is here on behalf of SoundCloud. Now, SoundCloud is amazing. If anything that we say today on today's call sparks your interest in SoundCloud, I would really encourage you to check out their company page on powertofly.com. Again, we're going to send these links in the group chat as we go. But basically what you're looking at now is what their company page looks like on powertofly.com. Now, when you are there, there's some great resources, and we can talk a little bit more about what this can do for your job search later on. But basically, the thing to know is that this is where you can find out all kinds of information about SoundCloud. You can check out the overview that sometimes includes information about benefits or company culture. Things like events will show you events that they have participated on with us. Things like today's recording or past events as well. And then last but not least, you can always check out the jobs tab on their page. There's one on every single company page on powertofly.com. But that is where you can go to search roles. Now, if you are actively job seeking, but don't see anything right this second that lights you up, I want to apply for that role, that's okay. If that sounds familiar, sounds like you, I really recommend you check out this big pink button. It says follow. Clicking that button or tapping that button is going to do some really great things for you. But effectively, what it does is it works like your friend who already works at SoundCloud. So clicking that button or tapping that button is going to allow Power to Fly to tell the SoundCloud team that you are interested in working with them even before you fill out an application. So we're going to keep you on their radar, but we're also going to help you in your job search and kind of make that a little easier by letting you know when SoundCloud posts new roles. So you don't have to keep coming back and rechecking job boards or setting your own alerts. We will take care of that for you and take some of that weight off of you. Now, the other thing I recommend that follow button for, even if you're not actively job seeking, but anything we say today about SoundCloud kind of sparks your interest or really piques your curiosity, I recommend that you click that follow button and add them to your follow network on powerfly.com. The reason I say this is because when maybe you're not looking right now, but next time you're curious and you want to see what else, like other opportunities might be out there for you, you can come to powertofly.com and you already have a short list of companies that really walk the walk and talk the talk when it comes to things like DEIB. So I really encourage y'all to make the most of this resource. If you have questions on this, you're always welcome to ask in the chat. I'm happy to help y'all out. And we would love to see y'all join the Follow Network there. Now, I'm really excited to introduce our speaker today. Her name is Sarah Hodd, and she is the Global VP of Talent Acquisition at SoundCloud. Now, Sarah is a dynamic leader who transitioned from an award-winning news and media producer to a seasoned talent acquisition executive. Sarah has a talent for identifying potential, crafting strategic initiatives, and steering teams. And she champions diversity, equity, and inclusion in her leadership approach. Sarah is passionate about fostering growth and innovation, and she believes in the power of authenticity in achieving optimal performance. Now, beyond her professional prowess, Sarah is a singer-songwriter, a devoted dog mom, and finds balance as both a yoga teacher and student, inviting connections and growth opportunities. Sarah, I'm so happy to welcome you to the stage today. Is there anything else you would like to share with our audience before we dive into questions?
Yeah, Meg, thank you so much for having me. This is so exciting. And that was a lovely intro, so thank you. Let's see, I can tell you a little bit. I've been at SoundCloud now since August of 2022, so like a year and a half, a little over that. I'm based, right now we're in New Jersey, we're in my basement, but I'm based out of the New York office, and I'm in the office a couple days a week. And if I were to share something a little bit fun or maybe interesting about me, we were just talking about the lighting in here. So for those of you who are able to see what's going on in this room, I've got twinkle lights, I've got LED lights. What you can't see is that there are about 5 salt lamps behind me. I have an obsession with inefficient lighting. That takes like 10 minutes for me to turn on all the lights in my room.
All right, I gotta ask, are
Yep.
you from the fellow neurodivergent community who cannot stand the big light?
You know, that is not me, actually. And I've realized over the last couple of years that this is something that we have in common, though.
Yes. Oh, the big light. It's
Yeah.
just like a chamois cloth or the spoon that's too big. Like I got a lot of sensory stuff, but like that, the big light.
I get it. I get it. So yeah, it's and it takes a long time to turn on all the little lights in here, but it is something that I love.
Oh yeah. Well, and just to call even more attention to your awesome background, y'all, the neon that you can't quite read, that is a Biggie Smalls quote. What was it again?
I've got a story to tell. And that's something that I believe we all do. And it speaks to me musically. It speaks to me in my talent world, in the talent world very much. That's a guiding motto for me.
Awesome. All right. Well, as we go through here, I'm really excited to start diving into questions, and we're going to be reviewing a lot of the questions that y'all submitted when you registered for today's event. Now, depending on when you registered, we may or may not have seen the questions beforehand, so hopefully we'll be able to get to a lot of your questions today. But again, I want to remind y'all, you took time out of your day to be here with us live. We want to reward that. So please, if you have questions, please feel free to send them into the group chat. I'm opening that up right now so I can take a look and see where people were joining from. Apologies. There we go. Let's see here. There we go. All right, so as we go through a few questions, please feel free to send them in. If you have a question that you would like to raise, but you want to be kept anonymous, no worries. You are more than welcome to send in questions or comments. Just DM them to me instead of sending them in the main group chat. But as we go through today, just make sure that we lead from a place of kindness and respect, obviously. But if we are going over one of your questions, maybe we're coming at it from the wrong angle, or maybe there is maybe there's a details or something that we should know about. Please feel free to let us know. We really want to make sure that y'all are able to participate in today's event as much as possible. I do see we might have had an issue with the waiting room, so apologies, y'all. We've got people moved in. But if you have questions or anything, just know the shtick was exactly the same as it always is, y'all, because I am a one-trick pony when it comes to that kind of stuff. And I will be happy to review some stuff for y'all if we need to. So, Sarah, to dive us into questions first, I want to start kind of with a broad question. There were a lot of people that had questions about transferable skills, especially when it comes to applying online or to roles where numerous applicants can be vying for attention. So let's talk about what that looks like. What should people know about transferable skills, especially if they are not coming from within the music industry to start with?
Yeah, that's a great question. Especially because, over the course of my career, I have made a lot of transitions. I've transitioned from one industry to another purely through being able to draw the connections between what am I currently doing, what interests me in that work, and how could this apply to something else. So I would say that, and a lot of what we can talk about in transferable skills and making moves to new industries, to new careers, starting with a really, really firm foundation of like, what are you good at? Like, what is it in the job that you are very, very good at? And what is it that you feel personally passionate about? What motivates you? And then try to connect it to the place where you're trying to go, the move you're trying to make, right? Because there are so many commonalities in our different jobs and the different things that we do, communication, there are lots of skill sets that apply in different industries. The thing is that you need to be able to tell that story. Like, it needs to be super clear for you how it's transferable before you can expect anybody else, any hiring team, to know that automatically. So having that very clear in your head, what do you love about what you do? What are you good at in what you do? And why do you want to move to this other place? That's going to help you create that narrative and draw that connective tissue that will make it really, really clear and easy for anybody on a hiring team to say like, oh, of course it's transferable because you've already answered that for me. It's clear for you in your head. So that's the biggest place to start, right? What's appealing to you about the industry? What do you love about what you're doing now? And how do we connect those dots?
Yeah, I love that you describe it as connecting dots, because I think that's something I certainly was not aware of it until I worked in recruiting. So I was 33 when I had it kind of explained to me that when you are sending out these resumes and stuff, you're trying to leave a breadcrumb trail, right? You're trying to make it easy for the recruiter to see you in that role. But I don't think it was quite explained to me that you're not just leaving breadcrumbs. I want you throwing entire loaves of bread down on that trail. Truly, it should be like a domino of bread slices, because recruiters are looking at these resumes or whatever so fast that you really do need to make it unavoidably clear, hey, this is how what I did applies to that.
Yeah.
Are there any transferable skills that come to mind that have been maybe particularly unusual, or skills that are really, really, really common that people should make sure they're highlighting?
Yeah. Unusual is a good question, because obviously it's a little bit dependent on where you're coming from.
The role. Yeah, all kinds of
stuff. So it would be hard for me to say what would be unusual, but I think that what I will say is that there's more common ground than we think, right? I think there's more common ground between different industries. And a lot of the times you see that in things like communication, just because in every job, no matter how you're communicating, we need to be able to do that. So it's a little bit more challenging to say, this is an unusual skill that you might not know would translate. What I would say is it's more that there are more commonalities, but it's, again, goes back to this idea of like, do you understand that? And can you make a case for it?
Yeah.
Like I've seen a lot of, I transitioned from the news and production as a producer into the talent world within news and production, leveraging, I understood the industry really well. I leveraged that to move into a different way of supporting that industry. And from then stayed in talent and moved over into music. So it was always like finding the bridge. I understand this industry. I can leverage that to a different type of job in the industry. Now I understand that job. I can leverage that job to a different industry. So it was more about like, being present of mind and understanding what skill I was using at that time, rather than saying, I've got this really unusual skill set. I can fit this square peg into the round hole. It's more about being present and thoughtful and saying like, what am I doing that motivates me and feels great? And how can I apply that to this next place?
Yeah. I love that. And I mean, I think it also like, correct me if I'm wrong, y'all, please feel free to weigh in the chat here. If you have a transferable skill that you are struggling to try and explain why it's transferable, throw it in the chat. Cause I'm really interested to see, because usually when you start asking people about these things, they're like, oh yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm good at like talking to different people and blah, blah. It's like, okay, that's communication. That's communication and is absolutely a transferable skill. The other thing that really helped me was like, try and simplify is like you're trying to explain that task to like a 10-year-old. So if you are able to pull back and you're basically simplifying to like basic verbs, you have a much easier, it's a lot easier to figure out how that square peg actually does fit in that round hole. You just didn't quite realize it. Yeah. Okay. Let's see here. I'm like taking a look at the chat to see if we've got people weighing in. Not quite yet, but if you've got a transferable skill that you're not quite sure how it transfers, please share it in the chat, because I would love to see the skills that y'all are like, I'm good at this. How do I communicate that? All right. So you started to tell us a little bit about how you've set yourself up for these kinds of career transitions yourself. But what do you think people should know first and foremost if they are thinking that they want to either transition their career into something else or pivot into a new industry, new field? What should people be thinking about?
Yeah. So you might notice a theme, because for me it's so prevalent in the work that I do and in the way that I've approached my career. Like I mentioned before, like being really, really firm on what you bring to the table, what it is that you're good at, and what skill set it is that you love executing, right? Like being super, super clear on that. And understanding like, what is it that you're looking for in this next move? So if it is that you really love writing, you're a strong writer, you love writing, but right now you're writing for, academia, and that's not really what you're passionate about. You're passionate about music, like being able to understand what it is that's drawing you to that next thing, so that you can ideate around it. You can build that narrative of like, here's the value that I offer around it. So being sort of very like, self-aware about your skills, self-aware about what it is that's motivating you. Something that I think gets overlooked a little bit, or maybe we don't talk about as much in making this move, is like, of course there's a risk in it. And anytime you're transferring to a new industry, a new role, it's something different, there's going to be stuff that you're not good at. Like you're taking your skill set that is your core skill set, you're really good at it, you love it, that's what you're good at. You're going to need to lean on that. So be super, super solid on that foundation. Because when you get into that new role, a lot of it's going to be unfamiliar and a lot of it's going to feel like shaky ground. So kind of setting yourself up to be okay, having that core sense of like, this is what I'm really, really good at and I'm bringing to the table. Like we lean on that foundation of strength in those times of challenge when you're like, I don't actually know anything about this industry. So the reason why I say it might be a little bit repetitive is like, I feel so strongly that you have to walk in knowing what is standing you up, like knowing what it is that you're bringing to the table and be able to lean on that while you're learning about the new stuff, learning all the new people, learning the new skills, and be okay with the discomfort of that. Because anytime we take a big move, even if it's not outside of the industry, but especially when it's, you're learning so much new information, the natural thing is to feel all of a sudden like you have no idea where your grounding is. but you will know where your grounding is because you're going to be so firm in that before you make that move. And I think that applies to everything in our life, but especially in this, because you get to the new place, you're excited about it, and suddenly you're like, what am I doing? And you need to be able to leverage your core strengths, build relationships, do the thing you do really well to give you a little bit of padding while you're learning everything else. I think you might
at least once a chat, I lose my mute button, like truly. Apologies, y'all. No, I mean, I think this is absolutely great advice. I mean, it's not like we expected anything else. But yeah, I mean, I think it really does kind of behoove you to be really confident in what you know how to do. Because that way, if you are asked to, extrapolate on that or dive in deeper, it's going to be a lot easier for you to think on your feet, because you're not also trying to like come up with these reasonings yourself, like in the moment, right? Yeah. This is the kind of stuff that you practice with, with friend or however you like to practice your interviews. Yeah. But yeah, I think this is great.
Even in like, thinking sort of on a practical and tactical standpoint, like I think about when I came to SoundCloud, I had a ton of experience in news and media. Like I knew that industry so well. I understood the talent landscape. I had like spidey senses about what was happening and about to come down the pike, so I knew I was leaving something that I felt I had so much experience and I felt so comfortable in. And moving into the music industry, which I love music, I'm a musician, but I hadn't supported it. I had never worked in the music industry before, right? So coming in, it's like, there's a lot I have to learn. I don't know the players. I don't know the people. I've got to like figure out where are the places and spaces I need to play in. So in the meantime, what am I good at? I'm really good at assessing teams. I'm really good at understanding DEI best practices. I'm really good at building relationships. So my first 6 months were doing that stuff that I do really well, like all at it, meeting everybody I needed to meet within, like really assessing, diving deep into the data, figuring out where are the gaps, where are the holes. I'm good at that. In the meantime, doing all of the studying, going out into the industry, figuring out where are the places and spaces I need to be. So in addition to being able to explain like where you're coming from, what you're good at, tactically, when you make a move like that, like physically spending time in the skills that you're good at while you're learning all the other stuff. So you're still getting that little dopamine hit of success. Like, oh, I'm doing something good. Like I'm still doing something good. Like we need that, right? We need that to feel motivated while you're learning the other stuff.
Well, and at least for me, like there's always that curve, right? Where you get there and you're like, I don't know anything, but they don't expect you to know anything. And then you get like kind of your feet wet a little bit. And it's like, all right, I know some things. And then you get to the point of, oh, wow, now I understand all the things I don't understand. Like I know there are things that I don't get. And now I can see there's a list. Yeah. And that for me is the point where, I mean, I've changed industries almost every time I've changed jobs, because graduated from college in 2008. So you did, any port in a storm. But like, it really has been one of those things where every time I've moved roles, I've gotten to that point where I'm like, oh, I don't know anything. I don't know anything at all. Why am I here? Why? They're going to figure out that I don't know things. And, where will I be then? And so, if you are secure in, hey, I at least know that I know how to do these things. Like it makes a massive difference. It really does.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. We're getting some great questions in from the chat. So thank you so we y'all. I'm grabbing as many of those as I can. But if y'all have ideas for each other, please feel free to chime in there. You are very welcome to. We love learning and growing from everybody today. So please feel free to dive in there as well. Okay, let's talk a little bit about people who've been in the workforce for a while. So let's talk about more experienced workers. If you are not fresh to the table, or you're not one of our ignorant young whippersnappers, what should people be thinking about if they are trying to pivot into that new field? If they've kind of been entrenched in one industry or in one role for a while, or do you have any different advice for people who might be more experienced?
Yeah. Somewhat different, some similar, but it's more of like a mindset shift. I think it's challenging when you are more experienced, you've been doing something for a really long time, and you are just, it's so hardwired into your brain and your skills of what you do. It can be hard to make a shift and realize like you got to take some steps back, which is often what ends up happening, So if you're trying to make a transition into an industry, a role, or something that's like is more unfamiliar. Oftentimes, like, we have to be okay with like a little bit of setting the ego aside, which the ego is well deserved because you put in that work. But sometimes, like, there's going to be fundamentals and things that you're going to have to learn that feel like 101. It feels like you were at, you were at like advanced level and now you're back at 101. So like being okay with that is it's challenging, but it's super important, because generally what I find in people that do this is you have a learning curve of having to feel a little bit like a beginner again, even though you've already built up this whole massive experience in a certain place, you feel like a beginner again. But generally that learning curve is a lot shorter because you've done it. You've learned new things. You've navigated the systems, even though you've done it in a different industry. You realize that like, actually, okay, I just have to kind of take this mindset and shift it a little bit over here. So
yeah,
it's like, don't be afraid of feeling like you have to step back a little bit and feel like the beginner, because the curve will be shorter for you. Like all of that experience will come into play. It's just usually that early step, those first stages are like, that's the challenge.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like it's being able to take that uncomfortable, like, oh, I'm a little bit new at this, or I'm a little bit rough at this. Like being able to sit in that discomfort is an invaluable skill, truly invaluable. Because like there's a ton of times where like, no, I don't like where I am because this is just bonkers. I don't like this. I don't know anything.
Yeah.
But like, let's be real. We're past the age of continuing education only being for like doctors and lawyers, right? It's just not a thing. Mm-hmm. Every one of us is going to have to be continually learning. And quite frankly, we're learning new things every day. All right. Whether you hopped onto Threads or you got back onto X or you decided to learn TikTok, like you are learning new skills. All right. None of us are quite as set in our ways dinosaurs as we think. So, recognizing the fact that we're going to be lifelong learners, indulge the curiosity. Yeah. Indulge it. Tell them like, hey, I don't know, understand how this works. How does this go? When you're new, that's the time to be like, hey, how does this work? Why do we do this? What's the context here?
I think there's like so much value in this, Meg, and something that I say often, and I believe like deeply in my core, growth happens at the edges. Like if you feel comfortable, you're not growing. Growth happens at the edges. So anytime you get that feeling of discomfort, now it's important to be able to discern like discomfort from like pain and trauma. Like obviously, if you're
anxiety, lack of psychological
exactly,
safety,
like we've got to be able to discern those things. But for me, like that little feeling of like I'm a little out of my depth, or like a little bit of feels uncomfortable, like lean into that. Like that tells me that I'm somewhere new. And if I'm somewhere new, that means there's something to learn here. Like there's an opportunity for growth. And our normal human reaction is to shy away from it and want to do the things that are already comfortable, we are, already feel good. And but the edges are where it's all about. That's where the growth happens. And so that discomfort is usually an indicator to me, there's something I can learn here, or there's something new, there's something opening,
Yes. Mary A, who's one of our fabulous frequent flyers, thank you, Mary, is chiming in the chat thread. She said, working through that feeling of discomfort of being a beginner and instead leaning on the wonderment is an important skill set. Lean out of the fear and into the creativity of learning. Kara also chimed in saying, being honest about what you don't know as you transition industries can go a long way. Oftentimes just saying, I don't know, will go a long way towards having colleagues help you and explain things to you in a different way. I love saying this. I love saying, hey, like I tried to learn such and such and I've got this far, but I don't know where to go next. Can you tell me? Like it shows that proactivity, but then also, you are able to ask these questions. So I feel like a lot of times people don't ask the questions because they're like, I don't want to be the person that like comes in the door and is like, hey, here's all the things I don't know. Totally. It's like, no, you're getting the lay of the land. Like that's important.
It's so important to be genuine in that. And people want generally like that inspires people to want to share with you more than if you walk in and think like you have to know all the answers in the room when of course you don't know all the answers in the room, right? Like, of course you're not going to have all the answers. You just got there. So it also gives other people an opportunity to feel like they can mentor, they can guide. Like people appreciate you put them in a position to feel like they're helpers, right? So it helps them and it helps you.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about, within not necessarily the music industry, but within your career and the growth that you've had, Do you think there are any like key leadership traits that help to spur on that growth?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yes. Yes is the answer. I think there are multiple, but I would say
Favorable.
yes. Yeah. So if I'm being honest, I've made some I've moved within industries, I've moved outside of industries, and I've gone from being a creator, like a producer, putting out content every day, to being somebody who supports the people who do that, to being a talent strategist, to moving into different industries. Um, almost every single big move I've had, whether it's been to a different industry or even just like larger in scope, like getting a bunch of more people on my team or big other businesses to support, every one of those, honestly, it's mostly been self-driven, meaning I have identified a need and made a case for that job or for that thing to happen. So I have said, okay, like, I think I could take a little bit more under my scope, and I think I could manage this part of the business, or it makes sense for us to align our talent pools in this part of the business. Let me pitch running that kind of thing. I won't go into all of the details, but most of the I think honestly, every single big move I've made has been something that I put together and I pinched and said, like, let me show you the value. Let me solve some problems for you. Here's how I'm going to solve your problems. Give me X, Y, and Z. And of course, you do the research, you make sure you're buttoned up, you make sure you are excellent at your day job before you start asking for other jobs. But I say all of this to say, when you think about leadership skills, like having a vision is massively important. Like there are a lot of people who can show up and say, what job do I have to do today? Tick the boxes, do the job. Having an ability to take a step back, identify a need, and have a vision for how you can fill it is incredibly valuable if you're trying to make moves like this, because the people that I worked for would not have seen me in those roles. I saw me in those roles, and then I made it very easy for them to see me in that role, because it was always a way that I was making something easier, for taking something off their plate, solving a problem. Depending on your team and your situation, of course, like the ability to do that may flex depending on where you are. But that skill of like being able to zoom out and say, all right, what's missing here? What would take us to the next level? What would make this team better? What would make X, Y, and Z better? And put that together in a way that sounds compelling is huge, has been for me very, very valuable. Almost every time I've done it has been successful. And the time that it wasn't successful, I think that I could have done a better job at it, if I'm being honest, because it was something that was needed, or there wasn't a lot of financial support for what I was pitching. But it's, as you move up and as you take on more responsibility in your role, it's less about can you do the job, and it's more about can you understand all of the inputs and outputs and impacts of the job, and if you can do that, you can make a very compelling case for the decision makers, because you're making the decisions for them and they don't even know it.
Yeah. Yes, I'm loving this. There's tons of love in the chat for this. Kara chimed in saying, I love that you say having vision is valuable. I've been working on my vision as well, and it started with understanding how I want to be in my career, as well as how I want to feel, has been valuable as I learned how to tell my story and craft a career vision. And I think this is really important, right? Because like there's all this pressure, especially early on in your career, to be like, okay, well, where are you going? What's your plan? What do you want to do? What do you want to be in 5 years, 10 years? And if you're not part of the millennial generation of like, I'm not planning for that. Like we could be invaded by aliens 3 days from now. Like, come on. I have seen the world change 18 times before I turned 21. All right. We're not messing with this. But like, if you can take a step back from that and realize that like broad strokes, yeah, totally fine to be like, I want to be earning $40 million a year and I would like to be in the music industry. Okay, fine. That's like, that's broad. But like once you have been around a little bit, like when you're like past your initial big kid job, that's when this stuff starts to make more sense, right? That's when it starts to make sense of, okay, well, like what do I want to be seen as? Like what do I want my brand to be? Which is honestly just fancy, buzzwords for what do I want people to say about me when I'm not in the room? That's all that is. Sounds fancy. It's not. Like, what is your reputation? What are people likely to talk about when it comes to you? And I think, you made a really good point. If you see yourself as that person that can be in leadership and you are acting you don't even have to be in a position of authority. You don't have to lead from authority. You can lead from expertise and lead from that, that place of helping out, like paying it forward and, sharing the knowledge that you're gaining.
Yeah. So much of it is like, how there's an empowerment in like, yeah, you're right. You don't have to necessarily be the most senior person in the room, but do you own, like, what do you own? Like, do you own the vision for yourself, the brand for yourself? Do you own your own story? Do you own the, if I see I want that job, like I'm going to take ownership over doing whatever I can to get in. I'll make the pitch. I'll do the research. I'll do the stuff. Like, be empowered in and feel like you are driving your career. I think there's a lot of course, like we need job opportunities, we need teams and departments that are supportive, but I think there's more, of course, but I think that we have more ownership and power in this than we think that we do. If you can own the vision, if you can truly like tell and in a compelling way, share your narrative of what value you bring. Why are you unique? Like, what is it that you do that nobody else in this room does? Like, that is compelling. And there's a lot of empowerment in that if you have that in your toolbox, the vision for yourself, the vision for where you want to go.
Yeah, of course. And it's also like a really great way to kind of short circuit some of that imposter syndrome of like, oh, well, I didn't follow the same career path as everybody else in the room, or I didn't go to the same schools, or I haven't been in the music industry for this long. That's the thing that sets you apart. You're not trying to fill a culture gap. You are you are not trying to be a culture fit. You are trying to fill a culture gap. Okay. So yeah, nobody else in that room went to lion taming school. Boom. You got that big cat stuff on lock. And now everything that you produce is going to be amazing because you're a lion tamer and you already know what your transferable skills are. So you're like, no, I can get difficult people wrangled because what is it after having like 4-inch fangs in your face? Truly, like there's a way to spin all of this. All right. Truly, truly, there is. Okay, let's talk about what it was like for you to transition from not music into music. Do you think that there were any specific pieces of your strategy or key things that you did that really aided that transition?
To move,
we touched on this a little earlier, but
yeah. To move from like media news into music, what aided or what kind of into that? Yeah. So I'm a musician. So in part, like in thinking about, there were obviously having the passion there helps ease, lubricate some of the gears when you're thinking about making that kind of a move. So that helped. Again, I think I don't want to like sound repetitive, but I think I leaned on the things that I've leaned on in every move that I made, which is like identifying what it is that I thought I would bring to it, identifying what would be super interesting and like a learning opportunity for me. So learning the music industry, I love music. Obviously, I believe in empowering artists, but also like I had been in an industry for, gosh, almost 20 years that like I knew so well. So there was a growth opportunity in doing something different. That was super appealing for me. So I wouldn't say there was anything that necessarily like, flipped the switch or made it.
It wasn't like a silver bullet of like, this is what made it happen.
Right. But it was more just like the approach that I've taken for my entire career. It all kind of like coalesced in this moment where it was like, okay, what can you do? Can you walk the walk of like really transfer to somewhere totally different outside of your industry and use your passion and your belief in what the mission of the company is doing? Can you use that to drive you? And that really did help. I would say there might be many different motivating factors for moving industries. It could be compensation based. It could be work-life balance based. Like it could be because you are passionate about a new industry like I was and you want to move into that. All of those reasons are valid, but identifying what it is that's motivating you, like that really helped me in thinking about the scary bits and thinking about the stuff I'm not going to know. Going back to like, but how exciting is it that I'm going to get to finally be around these people and places that I love? Like, so knowing what it is that's drawing you and kind of leaning on that a little bit did help me through some of the thought process around the difficult stuff, Yeah,
no, absolutely. As you're saying that, I'm kind of remembering my own transition into, into HR recruiting, like this space, I came out of audiobooks. And before that was in window manufacturing. And before that was a paralegal. So like truly all like you can make these changes and it's a bit bonkers. But when I was trying to pitch like why I wanted to be at Power to Fly, that was one of the things that we talked about was like, okay, I come from a legal background, right? So for me, when I talk about things like DEIB, I also think about populations like people who are incarcerated, people who have felonies on their records, people who were nonviolent offenders, but have some really, really BS drug stuff still on their rap sheet that we need to take care of because let's get it together, people. But that was kind of my like intro into this was like, okay, well, obviously I'm a woman. I do think equality is very, very important. But this is the extra layer or lens that I bring to this is like, they're, but for like 4-ish bad decisions, we are all of us much closer to the American legal system than most of us think. So like that is something that I am passionate about, but it really does helped me at least at first connect and like get kind of my feet wet and realize like, all right, so here's this other area that I can also expand into and bring into the DEIB work that we're doing. And so like we've had chats with people from, I think there was like a couple of Alcoholics Anonymous groups because those are a group of people that's very, very likely to have felonies on their records, unfortunately. And so like it's led to more connections. I was able to bring that and say like, here's something that I think we should do. Are we at all interested in serving this population? And so, truly it doesn't have to track, like you're the one that can connect the dots. Yeah. So really like think in left field, go outside the box.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting that you say that because something that we think about a lot and just in the talent world, but specifically now at SoundCloud in terms of like the talent that we are looking to attract and the way that we think about it. And the way that we think about diversity and equity, inclusion and belonging and having diverse people in your workforce, it's really about that, the perspectives, right? Like, of course, it's about having people who have different backgrounds and have different experience and have gone to different schools and grew up in different places, like all of that. But what it gives you is as close to 360-degree vision in the room on your teams, right? Like there's no way that we can account for everything and every opinion, but the more that you have in your room, in your decision-making process, on your teams, it gives us more vision. It gives us more of an ability to think about the things we're not thinking about. This sounds very obvious, but right now, especially when I think about the music industry and the technology industry, the changes and the contractions and like where we are in those industries, it is so important to be at the forefront and to understand like what are people on the ground thinking, like what is our audience thinking? And you can't do that if you don't have lots of different people who have their tentacles out there in the world getting lots of different opinions in. So it's just it goes back to something that you said earlier. It's like what you not having that traditional background, you having gone to circus school or whatever, like that's the value. That's the thing nobody else has, and it's so important. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Let's see here. Okay, this one was a question. It was kind of popular actually. This person had asked, how do you decide which areas of potential growth to focus on when you have several? So I know like we've had conversations about this on different chats before, things like do you want to stay an individual contributor or do you want to move into management? So I think that this is something like this idea of focus definitely spreads across industries.
Yeah.
But for you, what have you done in this area? Like, have you decided to go with a wide breadth of knowledge, but somewhat shallow, or do you go deep into one territory? Like, what does this look like for you?
That's a great question. So I mentioned earlier, growth happens at the edges and there are edges everywhere, right? So I think it's like in everything that we do, if we have a growth mindset, which I like to think I do, if you have the mindset of you're always learning, that every opportunity can provide you something to learn from, that there is no perfect, it is all practice, if you have that kind of mindset, then everything is a growth opportunity, right? And you may have areas that you see where you're like, okay, I know I really need to work on my presentation skills. Like I know that's a thing. And I know that, I keep on getting pinged because I'm not as detail oriented as I need to be. I keep on forgetting details in meetings, like whatever those big spots, the big flashing red signs where you know I need to lean in. Of course, there are going to be those, but growth is happening all the time everywhere, and it's incremental. It happens in small bits, right? It's not big leaps and bounds. So if you think about it that way, then what has helped me is, of course, identify the big places that are the biggest impact. Like if my boss is telling me, Sarah, your reports are a mess and I need cleaner reports, then that I'm going to focus on that, because that is going to have a direct impact on my immediate life. So identify the big places and figure out in small ways, like how you improve. So incremental growth. So what's the first thing I need to do? What's the second thing I need to do? Oftentimes talking to people, talking to your managers, talking to colleagues can be helpful if it feels unapproachable, if it feels like it's something that's out of your depth. Identify the big places. But overall, having more of that mindset of everything you do, we're learning a little bit, we're approaching it with a lens of like, how can I do this better next time? Like, is there something I missed here? That for me is more valuable than saying I'm going to focus on one goal for this year. It's approaching everything with a little bit of, okay, great. I did a great job. How can I fix this? Okay, I was 2 minutes late. I'm going to make sure I'm on time next time. The small stuff. It's that 1% theory of just improve a little bit, 1% every day, right?
Every drip makes a puddle.
Right. So like, figure out what your big things are, come up with some specific tactical ways that you can start to make some incremental growth in those, but also just have the mindset of like everything you're in, every meeting you're in, like, what can I take from this? What can I do a little bit better next time? How can I show up a little bit better? Because it's the small gains that end up making the big impact at the end of the day.
Yeah. Oh, I absolutely agree with this. Okay, let's talk about if you are considering a career move. Where do you recommend people look for inspiration of where can I go with what I have now?
Yeah, that's such a tough thing, because I think like we don't know what we don't know. Yeah. So like, it's all well and good if you have things that you have hobbies you're super passionate about. Like that's obviously a place to start. I would say like obvious places to start if you're thinking, I don't like what I'm doing right now, but I'm pretty good at this skill set. So where else could I put it? Think about where you spend your free time. Think about the things that like when you have an hour free from work, what sites are you going to? What are you looking at? What do you, so that's where I would start, just in terms of like, how do I even start to think about a career move? Start with the things you're passionate about. Talk to anybody that you know who might be even mildly adjacent to those things. There is now, I think, more than I've seen in maybe a little bit like sort of mid-pandemic, there was a lot of like LinkedIn stuff happening, but people have an appetite and a willingness to talk if you reach out to them and say, I just want to pick your brain, more so now than before the pandemic, for sure. There's a sense of like, of more of a sense of wanting to invest in candidates experience being more important. So I think feeling more empowered to reach out to people who might be in industries or be doing things that seem relevant to you. But a lot of it is, it's a bit of a research mission, and it starts from like, what do I like? What feels like, where am I spending my time? Where does my brain go when I don't have to be doing the thing that I don't like doing?
Yes.
And then going on to LinkedIn, going out and seeing like, okay, if I'm really into gaming, actually, like I'm a copy editor, but I'm really into gaming. And then you just start like, who are the companies that make the games you like? And then you start going on LinkedIn and like looking at who works there and look at their histories and find somebody who maybe went to a school that you did, like do the research, find a connection, and then put yourself in that somewhat awkward position of asking for people to spend some time and talk to you.
Yeah, I like this.
You don't know what you don't know, but people are willing to share it with you if you do the legwork. Oftentimes in making a move like this, it's not going to fall right in your lap, because it's not a normal transition, quote unquote. You're going to have to do the work to understand how it makes sense and do the research. But it's so much more valuable when you do.
Yeah. Quick tip, as somebody who does sometimes get requests like this of like, hey, can I pick your brain about your job, blah, blah. Two things. Don't ask to pick their brain. Say that you have questions, and then say like, the areas I want to discuss are blah, blah, blah. So either like a couple bullet points, or at like a question or two of like, hey, I wanted to talk to you about this. I had questions about this, but I'm also curious about these areas too. So like, give them something to go on of like, okay, but like, are you trying to transition to my field? Do you want to talk to me about a job that's posted with my company? Is this a fact finding kind of thing? Like, so give them a little bit of that context there, because that it'll be a lot easier. Like, don't say pick your brain, don't say buy you a cup of coffee, because those are like everybody says it, and it feels weird because then you're putting the other person in the position of having to be like, okay, but why do you want to talk to me, right? People do love to talk, they love to be helpful, so like that is a super awesome one. The other thing to remember, y'all, is like there's no dumb questions. There just aren't. And especially if you are doing that research and you're diving deep, find someone at the company that has the role you think you want to apply for, go to their LinkedIn, and then trace backwards from there. Look at what jobs they did previous to whatever. That is a really, really good one to kind of give you information that might otherwise like feel a little weird. Like, okay, well, what are the 4 jobs you did before this? Well, I don't have to ask you. I can just look at your LinkedIn and trace backwards from there. So, Christopher, LinkedIn stalking, I'm telling you, like that, I have a friend who could have, oh my God, she'd be a professional. It's wild, but you can really find out some great stuff there. Okay, we've only got about 8 minutes left in today's event. We're not going to have a ton of time to get to all the questions. I'm sorry, y'all. They were really, really excellent questions. Let's see. One thing that I wanted to ask about, let's talk a little bit about SoundCloud. So as we are, we've talked about them, we talked a little bit about, what it's been like for you to work there. But one of the things that I'm really curious about is as someone who is in it, how would you describe the company culture and how does it differ from other places that you've worked?
This is a great question. It differs greatly from other places I've worked. So if I think about SoundCloud culture and I think about our employees, so I would say the thing that defines SoundCloud employees' engagement with culture, the word that I would use is invested. SoundCloud employees are deeply, deeply invested in walking the walk of, meaning, are we living by our values? More so than any place I've worked before. I've worked at big media companies before. I've worked with massive teams, companies that had huge amounts of resources to put towards this topic, to put towards like the idea of culture. And at SoundCloud, I feel such a true, authentic engagement and investment. Employees are like, what are we living by our values, right? So it's a beautiful thing. What stands that up? When they say like they're invested in their culture, what stands up that culture? Diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. There is such an authentic commitment within SoundCloud to equity, to representation, to transparency and accountability. It's really, really inspiring to see. For me as a leader coming from other organizations where it's been a big thing, it's been something that people have been motivated by and engaged by, coming to a place where like the entire employee population is loud and proud about this is part of our values and we believe in this, and they want accountability. They want to see how we're doing it and where we're doing it and want to know the impacts. So I'd say that's one of the things that stands up our culture. SoundClouders have the zeal of true believers when it comes to the SoundCloud mission. Like, people believe, and that SoundCloud is here to empower artists and fans to connect, to open up avenues of resource for artists and creators to be able to get their music out there without the music industry blocking them. It's about democratizing access to resources and avenues for people to be able to do what they love. SoundClouders believe that, and feel very, very passionately about it. And then I would say the third thing, right? So devoted to the mission, really invested in diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And so if you don't know the history of SoundCloud, from its inception in 2007, SoundCloud has been like counterculture, right? SoundCloud was developed very specifically as an answer to the music industry, which felt like it was shutting down avenues of resources. If you weren't the 3 big people, you weren't going to get heard. You couldn't access music. Like, SoundCloud was born with a little bit of anarchy in its DNA, right? Like, we are not mainstream. And that still holds. SoundCloud has a rebel heart, and people at SoundCloud have that rebel heart, and they're very proud of it, So I think that those people are invested, and they're invested in those things: DEIB, the mission, and in SoundCloud's anarchist, a little bit rebellious nature. That's the DNA of our company.
Oh, I love this. And I can never hear anarchy, like anarchist, without thinking of the Talladega Nights quote of the little children running around screaming, anarchy, I don't know what it
That's
means.
amazing. I forgot
Oh,
about
God, I'm old. It's just the references, guys, they're not fresh. Okay, they're not. Um, no, like I love hearing about this. And honestly, it's nothing surprising. And SoundCloud's been a partner of ours for a while. So I've gotten to chat with a lot of y'all. But it's really nice to kind of get this reiterated from, people from various areas of the company. One thing that I do want to ask, do you have a top tip for someone who's
it.
applying? And if so, is this SoundCloud specific, or do you think this applies, across roles?
Yeah. So a little bit of both. So I would say, yes, I do have some tips, and they kind of relate back to what we talked about just now. So be passionate. Like the thing that I love well, one of the things, I love a lot of things about SoundCloud, and SoundCloud is not perfect, but one of the things that I love the most about it is that people are invested in the mission and people are passionate about what we do. Like it feels incredible to show up to a place where people like really believe, and that's what they're working towards. For our candidates, like if you're in an interview with our recruiters or with our hiring teams, be passionate about what you do and what we do, and do your research. Like I can't tell you the number of times like we'll interview somebody who looks great on paper, who's a product manager, who hasn't downloaded our product, who hasn't downloaded the app. Like do your research, be passionate, and make sure that like you have the questions and you show up in a way that shows us that you've done it, because everybody at SoundCloud is in it for the mission, right? So we want to feel like you're in it with us too. Um, yeah, that's the biggest thing. I mean, obviously, like have interesting questions, have a way to demonstrate that you kind of keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening, because SoundCloud is at the forefront of music and tech. So like that's important for us. But the biggest thing is be passionate and be passionate about us.
Love it. Love. All right, y'all. If anything that you have heard today about SoundCloud really piques your interest, I do want to encourage you. Sorry, I'm going to repeat it again because I know most people didn't catch this at the beginning. But this is SoundCloud's company page on powertofly.com. I shared the link in the chat thread. This is what you'll see when you go to that link. Basically, what you should know, there's a couple great things here, but if you are trying to utilize Power to Fly in the best way to help your search and your, for job stuff, this is how to do it. Okay. So I recommend that if you have an interview coming up, that you go in, you check out SoundCloud's company page. The overview tab is good. That's going to give you more information about company culture. Sometimes benefits info is there. Stop, please. Thank you. Sorry, y'all. Dog chewing loudly under my desk. There's the events tab that will show you past events like this that they've participated in with us. And then as always, there is the jobs tab. So that's where you go to search. Now, the big thing that I want to remind y'all about, if you are actively job seeking, but don't really see anything right this second that, you're like, I got to apply to that role, that's okay. I recommend that you go to their page and tap this pink button that says plus follow. If you tap that, it's going to do some great things for you, but effectively what it does is it works like your friend who already works at SoundCloud. So it's going to, clicking that button allows the Power to Fly team to tell SoundCloud that you are interested in working with them even before you fill out an application. So again, really great option if you're actively job seeking, but don't see anything that's perfect for you to apply for right now. The other thing it does is allows us to take some of the weight off of you in your job search. So if you click that button, we are going to let you know when SoundCloud posts new roles. So it is an awesome way to make sure that you don't have to keep checking and rechecking job boards, and that you stay on SoundCloud's radar and they stay on your radar. Now, even if you're not actively seeking, the other thing I recommend that follow button for is so that when you are curious, sometime in the future about what opportunities might be out there for you, you already have a short list of companies that really walk the walk and talk the talk when it comes to DEIB. So I very much recommend that y'all check out SoundCloud's company page. You can follow and unfollow as many companies as you want on Power to Fly, as many times as you want, but obviously I recommend that you check out SoundCloud. Now that is going to bring us to the end of time today. But before we go, I just want to say, Sarah, thank you so much. This has been wonderful to get to talk to you, learn from you, and get a fresh peek inside of SoundCloud. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. This was such a delight. And I hope to hear from you and everybody in the chat in the future. You know how to connect with us. You know how to reach us. So don't be stranger.
Absolutely. Now, if this was your first Power to Fly event, I sincerely hope it will not be your last. If you are one of our frequent flyers, I cannot wait to see you again on another event going forward. I hope you all have a safe, happy, healthy rest of your day, week, and weekend. And go out and have the day you deserve to have, y'all. And before you go, thank you so much for joining us for today's event. I have a job because you show up to events like that. So like this, so obviously I'm grateful, but more than anything, y'all took an hour out of your day to do something for yourself and your career. That is not easy in this day and age. Okay. It really isn't. So whether you're a little treat person or not, I am, like, give yourself a pat on the back, gold star, cookie, whatever it takes. Because truly, like, you did something positive for yourself. Congratulate yourselves for that. All right. Yeah, that's going to be it for us. Go have the day you deserve, and we cannot wait to see you back here again soon. Bye,
Thank you.
y'all.